4, 3, 2, 1. So hi, everybody. This is the first meeting of 2021 for the Facilities Advisory Committee. And I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. And then Kelly, can I trust that you'll continue to allow people into the meeting? Okay. And first we'll go with land recognition. Just want to recognize that we sit on Ohlone, Muwekma, and Chochenyo land. The ceremonial quote, again, given that this is the first meeting of 2021, is "You're on mute," said by everyone in 2020. And we'll go ahead and do a roll call. And I'm going to go from how I see you all on my screens. So Mary Vigil.
Present.
Thank you. Yajing Sang.
Sorry. Here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. William Rojek. Sorry, and the reason I want people to be able to say here is so that one of the key points is to be able to fully participate in a meeting, and so that you can hear me and that you can be heard. So William Rojek. We can't hear you. Let me come back to you then. But right now I'm having trouble hearing you, William. Cecily Lee.
Here.
Thank you. Trustee Jones.
Here.
And I realize now Trustee Zhang. And then Brian Kilgore.
Here.
Thank you. Lisa Sanguines.
Here.
Thank you. Eric Chu. Thank you. Kelly Lynch McMahon. Oh, thank you.
I'm here.
Thank you. Judy Nye.
Here.
And then if I could ask everybody to go back on mute, because I'm back to hearing echoes. Okay, Michelle Hartman Gruber.
I'm here. I'm seeing myself as a picture and then also as just a name. So I'm trying to figure out why that's happening.
I just put you in the waiting room. So did you sign in from your cell phone as well, maybe?
No, that's a negative. And
okay.
I have closed out everything else. So I'm seeing myself now, and I'm not seeing the other, just the name.
Okay, so I've put the other Michelle Hartman Gruber in the waiting room. So we should be good there.
Leave her there.
And if everybody could go back to mute. Brian Gebhardt.
Here.
Thank you. Gerald Green.
Present, Antonio.
Thank you. Robert Howe. Robert.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. I thought I just did Brian Kilgore, but he moved on me. Brian Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you. Shushita Malik.
Yeah. Hi. Here.
Okay, great. Sorry, now I am getting people to move around. Kevin Flanagan.
Present.
Thank you. Sharon Coco.
I'm here.
Thank you. Skipping past Lise. Henry Fung.
Here.
Thank you. And Connie Tung.
Here.
All right, thanks everybody. So with that, we have quorum and can go ahead and get the meeting started. So without any objections, I'd like to go ahead and adopt the agenda. So you can raise objections by either raising your physical hand or raising your virtual hand. And I'll give it 2 to 5 seconds. Let's see, let me expand this participants tab. Okay, so seeing no objections, the agenda is adopted as proposed. We'll now move on to the approval of the minutes/notes. And those are in the exhibit as is usual. So page 2 and 3. Let me go back to participants. Instead of entertaining a motion, I will accept these minutes without objection, but let me give us time to make any objections or comments. So probably 5 seconds or so. All right, seeing no objections, I will go ahead and accept the meeting minutes as proposed to you. Now we can move to oral communication. So let me go ahead and check that inbox. Sorry, just 1 second. So we've gotten oral communications from Google and YouTube. So those are not relevant. All right, great. So we can go ahead and move to the staff update. And so I'll hand it over now to Kelly. Sorry, Ms. Lynch McMahon. Let me see if I can call her. Just 1 second. Okay, so I just heard from Kelly. She's rebooting her computer. She should be joining us momentarily. Without objection, if we could skip to the liaison report and discussion from the MIP and SDI committee. Is that fine with everybody? So any objection while we get Kelly back? And I think she is back, but we'll go ahead and do that anyways. Do representatives or liaisons to the MIP and SDI task force want to update the FAC on what's happened over the last month or so?
Sure. Sharon, you want me to do it?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. We met on Monday, the 11th, and there were 2 items on the agenda. The first was to discuss creating a primary and an upper grade level strand at 2 different schools. So we had the principals from Leach and Warm Springs present, how it works for them as a potential for making space at 2 schools because we were having such trouble at 1. And then the second item on the agenda was to take considerations from members of the task force. And we came up with recommendations for both programs. Lila Bringhurst was an option to have a whole program at that site. I think you're going to discuss it in a minute, Kelly, the disadvantages to that. So I'll leave that for you. We also talked about sister school options at school sites that had lower enrollment, which would be Blakeow, Grimmer, Brookville, and then Warm Springs and Leach. We went on to share some program capacity and the actual numbers of the 2 programs, Mandarin and Spanish. I think those are posted on the website if anybody's interested in seeing those numbers. And in the end, we came up with 3 options for both programs. For Mandarin, Option 1 is Lila Bringhurst to co-locate at one site. Option 2 is a K6 strand at a school that it's fiscally and operationally viable. Strand 1 would be at Azevedo, and then another strand could be at one of those schools, Blakeout, Grimmer, or Brookvale. There were some considerations offered. Travel distance may impact enrollment and financial and operational expenditures, and then considering siblings as the area of priority. Then an alternate proposal was to move the new kinder MIP classes to Blakeout until Lila Bringhurst is available. And then 3 options for the Spanish immersion program. Option 1 being Lila Bringhurst. Option 2, unification at Grimmer, maintaining homeschool students. And option 3 is sister sites, maybe condensing the 3 schools into 2, possibly Grimmer and Blakeout, or second option is Grimmer and Vallejo Mill. So those are the proposals that are being sent to the board on the February agenda. Sharon, did I miss anything?
No, the only thing that the group decided as we went further into the meeting was that Leech and Warm Springs were not due to fiscal impacts and what they would have to do to the sites to accommodate, specifically Leech, playground space, different kinds of things. They took those 2 sites off their consideration list. That's the only thing that I remember that's any different.
I have 2 questions. There was a discussion about primary and upper grade. What is the distinction of those terms?
So at Leech, K2 is at the Leech site. And then when they go to 3rd through 5th, they go to the Warm Springs site. So primary is K2, intermediate is 3-6 or 3-5, depending on the middle school situation.
And then my second question before I hand it off to Brian is, I noticed that the option 1s were both Lila Bringhurst. Are those options possible for both programs?
No, one or the other. Leaving room for the homeschool students, keeping in mind that Blakeout is losing the preschool classrooms because Rick's is scheduled to open in the fall, so that the other program potentially could go to Blakeout.
Got it. Brian Gephardt?
So I watched the video of the meeting, and anybody interested, I recommend watching that. I've come to appreciate watching the last few meetings how complex of a set of scenarios this is. And I have a bunch of questions and input, but I'm not sure what best use of our time here for me to ask them. But I want to know if there was a way for me to provide my questions and input in another way.
Brian, I think the best way for you to do that would be to just go ahead and email myself and Sarah and Associate Superintendent Salinas, and we can evaluate your questions and provide you with some feedback.
Okay, I'm hoping I would love to provide this feedback to the task force as well.
Oh, by you doing that, we would of course incorporate it into the documentation that then is posted in the I guess the link or the space where those materials are held. So it's not like it would just stop with us. We would, answer your questions and then provide it and input it into the documents that go along with all the other stuff.
One other point I would.
Can I just note
Go
that we
ahead,
will
Julie.
have one more task force meeting before the board meeting in February.
And one other point I would make is by appointing, liaisons effectively. And Judy and Sharon, you're voting members of this task force.
Yeah. Yes.
So I would highly recommend, Brian, that you funnel those concerns also to the liaisons that we have from the FAC. That would be an effective way for these bodies to communicate and collaborate.
Yes, I think I will definitely do that. I wanted to make sure I was following proper protocol though. So this is good to confirm. And I will, I do hope you guys can post the agenda information from the meeting a couple days ago. Only the video is posted right now. And I know it's because of the holiday break. It's been a little challenging, but all that information you provided around the number of students and the projected growth and all that stuff is information that I've been wondering for a long time. And so, and it was very clear. And I'm super impressed by the work of the whole committee and Judy and I and Sharon Coco representing us well. Not that I need to tell you that, but thank you.
Yeah, and this is great feedback for me. We potentially could have also opened up this discussion item, and obviously we still have the ability to do so, you know, if the committee so decides, you know, through motions and the like. Hearing nothing, we'll go now to staff update. So thank you everybody for your flexibility in hearing the MIP and SDI report back.
Yeah, thank you so much. To be honest, we've been so busy this week, I forgot that we met on Monday. So, but thank you, Judy, and thank you, Sharon, because that was a big mountain to climb on Monday. So I'm glad that we were able to come with some recommendations that we'll prepare for the board. And as Judy said, we do have one more meeting where we will be looking at the information that's prepared for the recommendation, and the committee will have input into fine tuning that before it's submitted to be put on the agenda for discussion. With that said, I'm going to go to my staff update. So on the Measure E projects, we actually have quite a bit of work going on, and there are currently 3 middle schools that are under construction / design development. So for Centerville and for Thornton, all of the site work has been started, and site work being utility work as well as some foundation work for the new structures. Centerville in particular had their transitional housing delivered to the site last week. So we are going to be seeing a lot of activity over the next 2 weeks in mobilizing those units and actually installing them in their future home, where the classrooms and teachers that are in the current permanent building will be transitioned over spring break into the portable structures, and the demolition of the old building will begin sometime in May or June, depending upon just a bunch of logistical stuff. But that is the main work that's going on there right now. Thornton is moving along really well. We haven't had any major hiccups or work stoppages due to any unforeseen conditions at this point. And if you guys have an opportunity, you can drive by and see that the track and the ball field and the play courts are completed. The foundation for the new 2-story building is going in, and they are starting to also do the utility work associated with the upgrade of service for Thornton. That will be completed over the next couple of weeks. Horner is 100% complete in terms of the new construction and the contract under the McCarthy scope of work. That is going to the board for notice of completion, I believe, either this meeting or the next meeting, but I believe they may have pushed it to the next meeting because there's so many things that they're going to be talking about on this January 20th agenda. But the second piece, which is a smaller project, is the PE locker room that is part of the Horner campus, but it's not part of the modernization project in the sense that McCarthy is not going to be performing that scope of work. So we'll be presenting and taking that update to the board this next meeting, and we'll be talking about budget and scope and where we are falling with regard to that particular portion of work. And once we get the feedback from the board, that work will actually be executed and completed over the next 6 months, so that by the time we are crossing our fingers back in person for the fall, that particular scope of work will be finished and there'll be sufficient housing for all the students to have changing areas for their PE classes. The other thing that's going on at Horner site is that there's new fencing and some minor modifications to the parking area at Hirsch, because during the modernization program, there were some, damages that occurred to the fencing at Hirsch, as well as they utilized the parking and part of the parking areas at Hirsch for the modernization. So we're basically going to go in, kind of clean things up and expand their parking area, because they lost parking when Horner expanded their footprint, and kind of make them whole again before the fall as it relates to access and parking and site security for Hirsch. Kennedy High School is another project that is currently in design development. We are currently doing a pre-check appointment with DSA and looking at all of the scope of work for Kennedy. And we're anticipating getting some comments back and moving forward with getting that project in line to potentially have bid and construction work start sometime this summer, early summer, I should say. And so that's moving along really nicely. And trying to think, my mind is leaving me. But overall, we're doing really well with our Measure E program, and we anticipate having, that's what it was. So at the end of this month, the facilities department, along with Vanner and the Measure E bond program team, we are going to be hosting a series of community engagement meetings, and they are going to be specifically done according to attendance areas. So we have 5 dates that we've identified. And of course, the 5 dates will correlate with the 5 attendance areas. And at these meetings, this will be an opportunity for us to showcase and talk about all the wonderful things that the bond has done for the district, showcase the projects, review the scope of work, and basically give people an opportunity to see exactly what's going on in their attendance area, have an opportunity to speak directly to myself, as well as some members of the design team and the program management team, and have any questions or concerns or anything addressed in a public forum. We're going to talk about the scopes of work, the projects that have been completed, the projects that are ongoing under construction, and then those that are forthcoming in the next increment of projects to be released in the bond. And so we're hoping that it will really provide just another opportunity for people to get more information and, just get up to date as to what's going on. And these meetings will actually be held on a quarterly basis moving forward. So this will be our first for January 2021, and then you can expect one every quarter, or at least depending upon how successful we are with that. And if people give us feedback that they want those continually, we definitely will do one, at least a second one within the year. But the goal is to have them on a quarterly basis so that people have an opportunity on a regular basis to get information about their Measure E program in their attendance area. That's all I have for our Measure E. If we move on to the bond audit process, there was a consultant that was interviewed in December, and at the last board meeting of last year, we did approve, the board approved the Total School Solutions is the bond auditor that we were hired for the program review, program review of the Measure E bond program. And they're doing it not because there's necessarily anything wrong or any irregularities, but because myself is a new person within facilities and managing the bond, as well as Associate Superintendent Marcus Battle. He only has, I guess, maybe 6 or 7 months on me in terms of time. He felt it necessary for us to do a bond audit because we're also in the halfway mark of our bond in terms of our expenditures. And he wanted to have an opportunity to basically have a third party do a forensic review of how the bond has been implemented, how decisions were made, financially, how monies were spent, and to also look at the process that the district has in place and how they actually implement those projects. They're going to look at staffing. They're going to look at board member policies and procedures. They're going to look at overall process of what our district has in terms of place of process. And so all of that is going to be going on over the next few weeks. And so they are going to schedule interviews with board members, directors, associate superintendents, and they're also going to be interviewing some folks from FAC, CBOC, and I believe the Budget Advisory Committee is also going to be interviewed. And so if there is someone from FAC who is interested in volunteering to participate in this process, please let us know, and myself and Sharon will coordinate with them to provide access and opportunity for them to interview you all as it relates to the Measure E bond program. So, and that process will take, we've given them 3 months, but we're hoping that they, of course, complete earlier than that. And their report will be presented to the board for acceptance and review. I believe it's the second meeting in April is what we've earmarked to have that information available. And we definitely will provide you all with a courtesy review and opportunity to review and discuss that as well. Any questions on the bond audit process? No? Okay. So the next thing on the,
Sorry,
Antonio,
Kelly.
did you raise your hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when would the timing, and apologies if this was discussed during the board meeting, when would the timing be of the completion of their audit? And what are the potential, like, quote unquote, grades that they could give?
Well, I don't have necessarily the grades per se. We're just crossing our fingers that they don't find anything that is negative or adverse that would cause us to say, oh, we've not been doing something properly. The outcome of their audit, though, is we want to, in particular, really fine tune our process and procedures and also look at our staffing loads, because that does impact the overall performance of how the bond is executed and either successfully or unsuccessfully completed. So those are, for me, those are my things that I'm actually looking for. From a financial perspective, we've had audits of the bond previously, and we always are given no exception taken in that we are always within compliance and meet our regulatory obligations and financial and fiduciary obligations to community, and that the dollars are always audited and we come out very clean. So I'm not so worried about that, but really just looking at the process side and the staffing side is where we're looking for the benefit. They're hoping to complete their reviews no later than the end of February so that they have March to prepare the report and give us an opportunity to have feedback and input before we submit it to the board in April. So it's a pretty quick turnaround for the amount of time that they're looking at, because they're looking at 17, 18, 18, 19, and 19, 20. So it's a 3-year forensic review. I hope that answered your question. Okay. So with regard to item C, the 7-Eleven committee, we have been meeting with the 7-Eleven committee since, I believe, October. And we've had lots of good discussions, lots of good conversation. So where we are right now, we've had 2 community forums that we have presented information to the Kennedy attendance area. And the 7-Eleven committee will have a 3rd meeting this month to give folks another opportunity to weigh in on the Marshall site and come up with, provide feedback to us as to what the community wants to do with that particular piece of property. Once the community forums are completed, the committee will be meeting and will review the feedback from the community and actually provide a recommendation to the board based on the information that they've gathered. We're in the process now of working with the committee and drafting that template of the recommendation. And I believe we meet tomorrow to talk about some of the feedback we received in the previous 2 meetings and to also look at things that we can do to improve community engagement for the 3rd meeting that we're planning on doing either at the end of this month or the first part of February. I believe, do we have 7-Eleven committee members here?
I'm a member.
That's right, Sharon. So
Yeah.
Sharon, did you want to add anything to that?
No, we're trying to firm up whether or not the 3rd community meeting will either be January 28th or February 4th. At this point, it's looking more like February 4th will be the opportunity again for the community to provide input and ask questions. And then that will help us make a report to the board.
Sure. And our deadline to report to the board, and if my memory serves me right, they wanted us to do it within the first quarter of 2021. So if we can meet a date in February, then we're gonna meet the task that was assigned to the committee. So, but that's kind of where we are, and that's my staff update for all those wonderful things that we've got going on. And if there's any questions, please feel free to ask me, or if I didn't address it in this meeting, please feel free to email me.
So without objection, if we could extend for 2 more minutes. I have someone in the queue and then I have a question as well. Seeing no objection. Lisa?
Hi there. Couple of questions regarding the outreach and the community outreach for the Marshall site. First of all, I would like to know what kind of outreach was done for the community events that were in the first dates of the 2 community events, and how many people attended, what was the forum, and what is going to be done differently, I think, for the 3rd meeting. And are there any plans to do leaflets, signs, all sorts of things? I actually live 500 feet from the site and nobody in my neighborhood has ever heard about these. And nobody that I know has heard anything or knew that this was happening. And one of the meetings was posted like the night before, like at 11 p.m. or something, and the meeting was the next day. I think it was December 7th. So I'm just trying to figure that out, and would like to know how many people actually attended, because it just does not seem like it's getting to the community that's actually surrounding the site.
Sure. So 2 things. We originally had planned on doing like leaflets and posters and things like that, but we were advised, because we are in shelter in place and that the hand-to-hand contact of like posting stuff or sticking stuff in somebody's mailbox, we were I don't want to say told not to do it, but they said, you guys of course can do what you want, but we prefer you not to engage in a hand-to-hand or touching or just having stuff where people potentially can be exposed to COVID-19. So the decision was made to use the communication system that the principals use to send out email blasts and phone calls to parents and community members in that attendance area. I have to apologize because I'm totally unfamiliar as to how that works, and so we We of course pass the information on to our staff that does do that. And we were assured that that was done. I apologize if it was not done, but that was my understanding that it would have been done. And then in terms of outreach, in terms of what we're going to do differently, we are going to go ahead and send out mailers this time around, because we figured out a way to have a touchless kind of, outreach activity. The information is posted on the district's website, and it is posted and sent out through, as I said, the different attendance area schools. Those principals have that ability to send it out in their weekly distribution to parents that have children that attend in that area. The other thing that's going to be different as well is that we're going to look into and figure out how we can do like a robocall kind of thing that is much more engaging and informative.
Sorry, Kelly, if I could actually now entertain a motion to extend for time, because we've exhausted time.
Okay.
And I understand someone else is also in queue, but out of respect for the committee's time, I want that to be their decision, since I've already waived objections for the first one.
So moved.
Let's go with 5 minutes, given the length of discussion. Would that work, or would that be your motion, Sharon?
Yeah, that's fine with me. If you want to do it a little bit longer, that's fine too.
All right, do I have a second for 5 minutes? All right, I have a second from Cecily. And now if people could either raise your hand virtually or physically in favor, please do so. And sorry, I'm taking those in favor right now. Yes. All right, please put your hand down. Any opposed? All right, so we'll go ahead and extend for 5 more minutes. Kelly, could you continue?
Sure. And it's the other part of your question was how many people attended? We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We had 6 people that participated in the last community meeting forum. And then the first meeting we had 1 participant that participated, and he actually also came to the second one as well. So I guess you could discount him, but we counted him as a participant for the second meeting as well.
Yeah.
So,
and that's kind of what I was getting at, is that this is a large community and a very diverse community. And I do have some grievance around these, because not everybody that lives here who's going to be impacted by traffic or commercial or condos going in there has children. So I did get it because I do happen to have a child in this area, but most of my neighbors and most of the folks around here don't. And if they are retired, they won't get a notification by FUS because they're not tuned into FUS or to FUS website.
well,
So
and
that's not a good idea. The other thing is, you could have put signs on the site itself,
that's
on the
exactly
chain
what
link
we're gonna do.
fence. There used to be a huge sign from Stratford for their summer Socrates summer program, or child activities in the summer. You could put signs on the chain link fence saying this community, this site is going to be repurposed or whatever, and you can tune in. There's also a park, Marshall Park. Not too long ago, the city of Fremont did something about the parks, and they wanted people to engage on what they're doing with their parks. And they put signs on trees and on all the parks saying, hey, we're going to do something about your parks. We need your engagement. And that seemed to work, because I saw people even driving and taking a picture of what was posted on a tree. So I just want to say, please, 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 you need to reach out to the community. I put it on Nextdoor in my neighborhood, and nobody knew what I was talking about. And then, there's like a lot of people around here. There's like condos behind Marshall Park. We all live around here, and nobody knew. And honestly, your first meeting was like the thing from FUS came at 11 p.m. and it was like the next day or something. And it was January 7th or something around Christmas. It was really hard for folks to tune into that one. And the proof is you only had one person, right? So certainly, I think if you're going to make a decision that's going to impact traffic and property values and the sense of community around here, you really need to engage with people. And I don't think there has been a fair approach to the community, because everyone I go around with my dog and I walk the dog has no idea. And they said, oh yeah, they removed the trailer. Do you guys know when their school's going to reopen? People just don't know. And there's a park next door. A lot of people use that park. And there's an opportunity to do contactless outreach. It just has not been done. And I
We
can
definitely will
attest
take
for that.
everything you're saying, I definitely will take under consideration, and we will work to implement some of these strategies that you just talked about.
And you could use Nextdoor as well. I mean, you could use social media. There's other platforms, not the FUZD. People that are retired don't have kids in FUZD. They won't know about that if they get something from the principal. That's going to be a very small population. Thank you.
So much. Thank you.
Thank you, Luisa. And now moving to William. Sorry, William, I'll refer you to our ceremonial quote. We can't hear you. You're on mute.
Unmute him?
Can I think.
Okay, he's
He
unmuted
just did,
now.
yeah.
So sorry, I was calling in through my phone because I was having audio issues. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. So you made mention that you had some feedback, but I was just curious, overall, before this process is all said and done, how are you gauging or measuring a sufficient amount of feedback before actions actually taken with the decisions that are made for these properties? At what point do you feel like you've had enough feedback?
Well, how can I answer this without sounding unsympathetic? So I was tasked to come up with a recommendation from the committee. So the 7-Eleven committee is comprised of your community members. And my role in this is only to receive the information and the recommendation from them. And the board is the final they're the final say so in terms of what's enough or what the decision will be. I can't necessarily wholeheartedly answer that for you as much as I want to. I can't really say what the metric is to say this is enough or this is too little. Definitely one person showing up is of course too little. The whole purpose of us having a third one is because we as the committee felt that there's not enough feedback. 6 people of an area that, there's 10,000 folks or something, of course is not enough. But we want to have the ability to try and reach folks as much as possible. And so we're going to do whatever we think is necessary within the time constraints that we have to be able to do that. The other thing is, there is a timeline that we're working with that the district has to adhere to. And so we could have a community outreach meeting every month for 6 months, but we're going to be negatively impacted if we don't address these issues and move forward with what our responsibilities are with regard to Marshall site. So that kind of.
So I allowed time to. Sorry, just to step in. So I allowed time to go over for a minute in order to hear a response, but I do see someone else in queue. In order to take more people in queue, I'll need an extension of time. If someone is interested in doing that, please make a motion.
Motion to extend the time, Cecily.
For how long?
10 minutes.
All right, so do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right,
Judy.
there's a motion to extend for 10 minutes. All right, all in favor? Actually, if you could lower all your hands first. Let me go ahead and lower your hand, William. All in favor, please either raise your physical or virtual hand. All right, please put your hands down. And all opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. And I will remind only voting members to vote. Okay, so William, go ahead, and then we'll move over to Shishida since she was in queue. If you were
I was
just
gonna say
responding
that's
to Kelly.
Yeah,
I'm
I was
sorry.
just going to say that's a fair response.
Okay.
And then that I understand that there are time constraints, but as was previously discussed, with different efforts to reach out to members of the community, it sounds like efforts are being made, but there was some concern about making sure that there was a sufficient amount of feedback from the community. But it sounds like there are varying degrees of response depending upon the campus and the community, the individuals that live around that campus or those facilities. So I think that was a fair response.
Thank you.
And before
Thank
we
you.
go
Yeah.
to Shishida, something that we could potentially discuss in thoughts on future meeting topics, not necessarily about 7-Eleven, since that is within their scope, but in general, when it comes to facilities dispositions, what community notice we believe might be adequate. But again, that would be for a future meeting, and we would potentially raise that under future meeting topics. Shishida.
Thank you, Antonio. So my question is, I'm also in from Kennedy attendance area, and I would like to understand the timeline and the schedule for the verdict of this Marshall site. And I am also one of the parents who was not aware of this community outreach program that was mentioned in the meeting. So what is the expected timeline, and what's the schedule, and what's the drop dead date that we need the facility team or the TAC team need the decision by?
So we're, as Sharon said, we have dates of potentially January 28th, or what was the other date, Sharon? February 4th, I think it is. But we're waiting on getting confirmation.
Yeah.
because we have to coordinate it with some of our bargaining units within the district to make sure that, we get proper representation at those things. So I won't have the confirmed date for you until we actually confirm it and get it locked down. In terms of timeline, the goal is to get the feedback from the community, have the committee meet, evaluate the information, and draft a recommendation. We then will, whatever timeline fits, it'll either go to the February 10th or the February 24th board agenda. And at that time, the board will take under consideration whatever recommendation is forwarded, and they'll make their decision as to what disposition will happen of that property. Now, understand, so the district has a requirement that, we're not allowed to have vacant sites not used for instruction for a period of time. We're coming up on that clock that will impact us as a district because we haven't used the Marshall site for a significant period of time. So it's the California Department of Education, as well as Office of School Construction, they will assess us a penalty for us not using our properties for their intended use. So that schedule is, and I don't have that in front of me, but our council has advised us that we need to either, kind of pull the trigger on Marshall and do what we're going to do with it, or face this sort of looming penalty within this academic year. So I can't answer like, oh, the drop dead date is this, because I don't have that particular information in front of me. But the district is in a situation where they will be penalized for not using the Marshall site. The other thing is that Marshall site was identified, I believe 2 or 3 years ago, as a potential site for surplus because, they're not using it anymore for instruction. And there was a decision not to use it for instruction based on, the risk associated with having a school site within a certain proximity to a gas line, based on studies and research. And I guess that horrible thing that happened over in on the peninsula years ago. So they made that decision and have been moving forward based on that decision. So now we are looking at, the 7-Eleven committee is formed by law. The district is required to have this committee by law to evaluate and determine what the highest and best use is for that property, or make a decision to actually surplus it. And so that is what this committee is in the process of doing. And our internal deadline is that we want to bring it to the board no later than the second meeting in February, so that a decision can be made. And the decision will have budgetary impacts because we do budget development and budget allocations the month of March, April, and May for your coming school year. So there's all these other things that are kind of tied to it as well. But that's our goal, is to, reach out to the community, get the feedback, develop recommendations on the information that's received, and allow the board to make a decision.
For my understanding, what is surplus mean? Sorry, I don't know. For my education.
Sell. It means
Okay.
to sell.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you for answering.
Oh, you're welcome.
Trustee Jones?
I'm not suggesting that I know what the recommendation would be, or if the recommendation is going to be to sell it, but I do want some clarity and to make sure that my understanding is correct and that this group understands is that normally if a district decides to sell property, that money must go into other facilities funds. So it has to be in some way used for facilities. Right now, because we're in a crisis with the pandemic, the governor has allowed districts for a certain period of time to be able to use funds from the sale of a property to go into the general fund and be used for other purposes. And I cannot remember what the time frame for that is. Kelly, do you remember?
We have until, I think it's like August 1st or something, to submit information to them with regard to any surplus properties and proceeds.
Okay, and so if the recommendation is to surplus the property and the board agrees with that recommendation, in order to utilize those funds for general fund purposes, do we have to complete the sale by a certain date, or just announce our intention to sell by a certain
I believe
date?
that we have to have our intentions announced, and there's some paperwork that's required to be submitted. And I believe
Okay.
the deadline for that is August 1st. But I think the transaction has to be completed by like December 31st or something like that. So, I mean,
Okay.
it's a lot of time, but it's not a lot of time when it comes
Okay.
to us kind of
And
processing stuff.
and if for some reason if we put it up for sale and it didn't sell by that deadline, then the funds would go to have to be used for a facilities purpose. Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
my understanding, but I can ask our counsel to provide clarification.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need like crystal clear clarity about the deadlines for what we need to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But just to add on to that, that gives you guys perspective in terms of some of the hurdles that we on the district side have to jump through when it comes to making decisions about these kinds of things.
I think I want to note for the public and for ourselves, it's been great to have Kennedy representation on this committee. Historically, we haven't had that. We've had vacancies in that regard. And so, members of that community are not able to be represented. And that's effectively what we all are, right? Representatives for our different attendance areas. So while we would definitely charge the district with, for example, notifying the area for when it comes to facilities, disposition of facilities, we are also somewhat, agents in this regard, especially in our representative capacity. So I'm very glad to have representation from the Kennedy attendance area on this committee. And just one other minor point, one of the reasons why I go back to you all for time extensions is because I see it as my role to conduct the meeting in a timely manner, but if the committee wants to extend the time, that's definitely, at your discretion. All right, so that exhausts that time. Let me look, unless there's a queue. Oh, Robert, go ahead. We have like 30 seconds.
Yeah, I just need 10 seconds. Just to kind of make Antonio's suggestion more concrete, since we are all members, we should be reaching out to our networks to propagate the messages.
Right. I would definitely ask us to do so, especially given our representative capacity. Thank you. Now we can move to the Lila Bringhurst agreement. This is a short discussion.
Antonio, just to also say, if there's ever any information that you guys want as you're disseminating information to your constituent members, please feel free to contact our office and we'll be happy to share or work with you guys to develop something or like a one-pager or whatever you guys need to support your efforts. So with that, the Lila Bringhurst agreement. So just to update you guys, Lila Bringhurst was formally transferred over in title to the district on December 31st. Yay! And we formally own it. But unfortunately, we are not in a position at this moment in time to actually say that it's completed because our legal counsel is still kind of fine-tuning the final negotiations with the developer with regard to like warranty and serviceability and things like that. So we're hoping that that process gets completed pretty quickly over the next 30 days. But the transfer of title and the execution of the land conveyance was completed on December 31st. So we're really excited that we were able to get to that point. The second thing is that we're currently working internally to evaluate how we can actually utilize Lila Bringhurst as a operable school. So first thing that's happening right now, we're looking at our and the operational budget of actually opening the school. And so on average, it takes a little over $1.5 million to actually open a school and have it operational that, if you're at full capacity. So that's looking at staffing, engineering support, and just our overall operations like PG&E and IT and, all the furniture and all the bells and whistles that make the school work. And so we're in the process of evaluating what that looks like. And unfortunately, because we are in a budget deficit, we have to look at, can we open it or do we have to wait? Because our enrollment numbers for that particular area of students that would be based at Lila Bringhurst have fallen short of our expectations on the developer side of providing students to actually open the school. So what we're doing is, as they stated in the MIP SDI liaisons, we're looking at how we can open that school with the minimal financial impact to the district. And by doing that, it means that we can potentially take one of the immersion programs and house it at the school, because that will put our numbers up above what our enrollment needs are from a financial head count of how many dollars we get from the state for, basically butts and seats. Secondly, we're looking at how we can not have to hire, additional instructors if we don't need to, because that's also a big number in terms of salary and expenditures and insurance and all that stuff that goes along with that employee. And then third is where we're looking at if we just can't do it. And so that's kind of where we're at in terms of a administrative team looking at Lila Bringhurst and how it can be utilized. And so a lot of these discussion points and recommendations are going to be presented to the board, and they will be presented in an open forum, and we'll have the ability for, folks to have discussions about it. But that's kind of what we're doing for our school opening plan for the 21-22 school year. And so hopefully our numbers will be down, so COVID is not going to be an issue, but you know, that's also part of the equation that we are weighing in looking at, hey, what is that really going to look like come September? And what's the opportunity cost for us to actually have this school open? And so those are active discussions that we're having right now. And so I don't have a definitive answer for you all, but I just wanted to share with you all that we are doing it. We are, you know, looking at all the options and trying to consider the best option that would support all of our programs district-wide and providing that school as a resource for the community. So just let me know if you guys have any questions or comments about that.
Right, 15 seconds. Seeing none, we'll close that item and move to the Prop 51 annual report.
Okay. So the Prop 51 annual report is the report that we are preparing to present to the board, I believe, on February 10th. And that is an outline of all of the dollars that we have received from OPSC from the beginning of the bond program. And I believe it's 2013 is when Prop 51 started up until now. And so the district has, from 2014 to 2019, cumulatively, the district has received a little over $55 million in state reimbursements for various projects that are capital improvements. We're doing a reconciliation of the funds that we should be receiving for our 1920, 2021, and 21-22 school years. Cumulatively, that's going to be around $26 million that we should expect to receive. And unfortunately, I don't have a definitive date that we're going to receive it, but I know that we have received our letters of allocation for Brookvale and Patterson, which are going to be, it's going to be about $6.9 million. And that should be received within the first quarter of this year. We've just recently submitted our reimbursement request for Lila Bringhurst. Lila Bringhurst is expected to be reimbursed at a rate of $35 million, but due to our agreement with the development group, the district is only going to be maintaining 14 million of that 35. And the remainder of that is going to be going back to the developer for reimbursement for them financing the construction of the school. So those funds will probably come to us before the end of the calendar year this year. And then we also have another $11 million that we submitted for reimbursement in late November, early December, that we're expecting to get our apportionment approval in May of this year, because those projects were listed on the governor's to be funded list. So we're hoping that, you know, that still holds true and that we have no idea what the governor's budget is going to look like or what decisions they're going to make with regard to the Prop 51 dollars. But for the sake of our planning purposes, we're putting it on the to be received list. And so that presentation will come to the board, as I said, on February 10th or possibly February 24th, based on you know, what they do with the agenda and whether or not they approve that being presented at that time. So that's my update for you on Prop 51. Are there any questions? Okay. Well, Antonio, is it okay for us to go to item A if there's no questions on B?
Yeah, so did we discuss, sorry, just for my benefit, did we just discuss B? Or are we going to discuss B later?
I'm sorry, is it okay to go to A? Because we did discuss B.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. So with that, if there's no questions on the funding applications, I actually have invited our SPUR team back to present to you all their findings of actual cost savings that we can realize for our solar program that we want to implement. They've been working with my staff as well as their team to come up with some very specific numbers that, based on our last presentation from them, I asked them to actually look at the entire district and put together very realistic numbers of what our actual cost savings would be. Whereas originally when they presented, they only gave you sort of a sampling of some of the projects that we would be able to accomplish in the district. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Kevin and to Brian, who have been so gracious and patient in waiting for us to get finished with our business of the evening. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Sounds good. And I assume you can hear me, and people are nodding, so great. So I'll share my screen. We've got a little presentation, but the host has disabled participant sharing. So if somebody could just right click on me, either make me a host or co-host, or go to your settings and allow that.
Oops.
So you go to the participant list, you can right click on my name or click more, and
I think I have all participants now. Let me know if you're.
Yeah, there we go.
Great.
Wonderful. All right. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, people are nodding. Okay, so so this is a follow-up on a presentation we made this past fall. As Kelly mentioned, I'm Brian Taylor. I'm with Forefront Power. We won the RFP for solar and storage that SPUR, the Joint Powers Authority, ran on behalf of all its member districts. And so we're going to we could give a quick refresher on that. And Kevin Flanagan is with me, and he represents SPUR. He represents the organization that ran the RFP that allows Fremont USD and other school districts to essentially piggyback off of the pricing and terms from that RFP. So I'm trying to advance the slides here. What we're really talking about at a high level is an ability for Fremont Unified to be, essentially leapfrog its neighbor districts to be a sustainability leader for California public schools through a combination of solar, storage, bringing solar into the classroom with curriculum, EV charging stations, being zero net energy, and really kind of getting ahead of any mandates that may come down the pike from the state, as well as saving quite a bit of money off of the rising utility rates that PG&E kind of hoists upon us every year. So Kevin, can I turn it over to you to give kind of just the nickel version, or refresher? I'm sure folks have forgotten everything we said last time, except for a couple of the really salient points, but maybe if you could just walk through who SPUR is, the RFP that you ran, et cetera.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. It's good to see you all again. Happy New Year. My name is Kevin Flanagan, as Brian and Kelly mentioned. I work for an organization called SPUR. We are a public agency made up of hundreds of public agencies. So we have over 300 school districts in our membership, representing thousands of facilities across the state. And what we do is we issue piggybackable requests for proposals for all sorts of things. I am the lead program manager for our solar and energy storage buying program, which is called the REAP program. And really the benefits of the REAP program for Fremont USD and other school districts is that you can really take advantage of the highly competitive bid process that we conducted across the state. We made all the major vendors, competed in our RFP. We made them compete very aggressively because we have huge buying power in the marketplace. We ultimately selected the company that Brian works for, Forefront Power, and then we entered into a master contract that memorializes all the pricing terms and conditions that you all can take advantage of as a school district. And what that does is it allows you all to streamline your procurement process, which allows you to capture incentives before they decline. It also gives you really great pricing, market leading pricing, and it also really gives you really favorable terms and conditions. So my team has negotiated contracts with Forefront Power that the district can take advantage of that really reduce the risk on the project and are really favorable for public agencies. The REAP program has been used by over 40 public agencies across the state to procure solar and energy storage. So it's not a new program. It's something that's been very popular. It's widely used, not just by school districts, by cities, counties, special districts, universities, even the state of California is using the REAP program. So it really is kind of a giant easy button for the district if you want to procure with confidence, knowing that you're getting a good deal, good pricing, good terms and conditions, et cetera. And it allows you to implement projects in a more accelerated way, which allows you to generate savings and get solar built at your sites. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian, and Brian's going to talk about kind of the proposal for the district specifically, and talk about the savings and kind of how the contract works.
Copy that, Kevin. So we're going to continue to move here. I kind of have given the commercial once before, but just suffice to say that Forefront is working with more school districts than any other provider in the space. We're working with Fresno Unified, Stockton Unified. We're working with over 40 different school districts and community college districts throughout the state right now. I don't think there's anyone that's doing more DSA solar than Forefront Power. And we have a very stable balance sheet, which is really important in these kind of topsy-turvy times when small businesses are going under, and solar generally historically has always been topsy-turvy. So having this A-rated 400-year-old parent company behind us is important. All right, so enough of that. The power purchase agreement is the vehicle that the district is considering. And with the power purchase agreement, again, there's no capital outlay on the part of the district, so you can use your bond money for other things. We finance the system, and by us financing the system, you get to take advantage of the federal tax credits that are available. So we finance the system, we build it, we design it, we permit it, we own it, and we operate it. You pay for the energy produced by it at a rate that's cheaper than what you're paying PG&E now, and flat for 20 years. So whereas your rates at your sites have been going up at a very steady clip over the past decades, this allows you to get off of that treadmill. And then, as I mentioned, there's a 26% federal tax credit that's available. And so if you were to use your bond money and own these systems, you'd leave that, 26% coupon on the table. So Forefront Power monetizes that tax credit with our tax equity investors and passes the benefit of that tax benefit onto the district in the form of a lower rate, a lower price for your energy. And then we make our money by this thing producing energy. So we both want to see it produce, and Forefront Power, as owner of the system, takes care of all the operations and maintenance. So this is not another asset for your staff to maintain. And we guarantee the performance of the system. So if it doesn't produce what we say it will in any given year, we make you whole for what you had to pay PG&E for that more expensive energy. So that's the basic construct. You've heard that before, but it was a while ago. So I'm trying to straddle the line between the amount of detail to give. So here is really the updated proposal. So this takes into account all of the information that we've received and all of the design that we've done. Basically, we have worked to tackle each of the individual attendance zones by getting within each attendance zone the high school, a middle school, 2 elementary schools, plus additionally, we have a couple of district facilities like the district office, the transportation department, the adult education center, et cetera, that are also able to receive solar. So in total, you're looking at 24 systems. You're actually able to offset the energy consumption of 27 schools, and you get about 7.4 megawatts of solar. In year one, we expect that based on the current rates now, not the rates actually when these systems would be energized, that you would save about $380,000 in year one. And over the course of 20 years, assuming PG&E rates go up at a very conservative rate, that you would save or you would avoid paying PG&E $26.1 million and rather reinvest that in your district. So again, excuse me. In addition, we offer added value of including solar workstations, EV charging stations, renewable energy curriculum, spare conduit as part of our build to allow you to have future security measures, cameras installed. And then there's also a provision to reimburse you for your inspector fees so that you can really have a no capital outlay type project. So next is a slide showing a breakdown of the sites that we're looking at. So forgive me for a big boring table, but you're looking at each attendance area. I'm sorry, my mouse. Each attendance area, and within that attendance area, you have a high school, the junior high school or middle school, and then 2 elementary schools up and down the board, right? And this allows you to make sure that you have equity throughout the district. And then in total, like you're currently paying at these 24 sites, 3.9 million annually to PG&E. This would allow you to reduce that by about 10% in year one. And then as utility rates go up at an inflationary clip, about 26 million over time. You can see that we're offsetting, in certain sites we're space constrained and we're not able to hit the, maybe an 85% target offset that we might want to hit, but you have a very high offset of 75% on average. And a few of the sites, 2 of the sites are able to incorporate batteries to do some demand shaving, which basically means the battery intelligently discharges energy to prevent you from having a momentary draw from the utility that the utility would charge you for. We talked about last time a little bit of the storage incentives and the net energy metering incentives, but this is kind of why SPUR's RFP is so valuable, in that right now there are some incentives available for storage, but they're declining rapidly, and they will be, we anticipate by next month they're going to step down, as well as the big platform that all these systems and really all the solar that you see in California is predicated on, this net energy metering framework, where when you send energy back to the grid, PG&E compensates you at a specific rate for that energy. And that kind of framework is changing. And we already saw it change once back in 2017. And at the end of this year, the CPUC will announce what the new net energy metering framework will be. And so making sure that your systems are, we have an interconnection application in this year, allows us to get grandfathered on the current net energy metering framework. So that's a kind of a high level of what's happening in the solar landscape. And then kind of taking that all together, we anticipate that getting on the current net energy metering framework would be able to preserve about 5.9 million, about $5 million of additional savings for the district. In other words, if you wait, you might lose out on $5 million of savings versus the anticipated $26 million in total savings that we expect. So that's about it. We have cash flows that we have provided, Cal, and we can certainly provide more detail on how for each individual site we came up with these specific savings metrics. And then we have layouts for each site, which basically show where the system would be located, where we're tying into your grid. And all of these systems are essentially parking canopies. So you would have shaded parking, you get LED lighting and better security at night. And most people don't realize until the system's actually installed and operating. And you get EV charging stations as well. So that is a pretty high level. I'll pause there and either answer questions or turn it back over to Kel for your feedback.
So Brian, can you just sort of point out to me, in looking at your last slide that you had for us, I want to make sure that we understand that the first column is our historic utility bill of the district is spending basically over the course of 20 years, $111 million in energy if we stay exactly the way that we are. But we currently spend about $4 million. This 3.938 is our cumulative amount of money that we're currently spending on our utility for power, right?
Right.
And then if we implement our PPA and storage payment, we then can reduce our utility bill to a little over $1.5 million, right?
you would have a PG&E bill that would be about $1.6 million. Yeah.
Okay, so basically you're cutting it almost in half by
Right.
adding the solar component and having the on-demand payment. I just wanted to make sure, because I know a lot of times when people look at spreadsheets, they're kind of
Right.
confusing if you don't walk us all the way through.
Right, that's exactly what's happening. So right now you pay about, at these sites, you have other sites, but we're
Sure.
focusing on these sites because these are the best sites within each attendance area, the sites that have the most optimal parking lot and space and consumption profile, that we can get enough scale, we can get enough, the thing is economical. Right now you're spending about 3.9 million. After you install solar, that would go down to 1.6 million with PG&E and / East Bay Community Choice.
Okay.
And then after, you would be also spending about 1.9 million on solar and about 44,000 on storage. And so taken together, your new PG&E bill and your Forefront Power bill are $379,000 less than your current PG&E bill.
Gotcha. Okay. But I just wanted to make sure that was clear and that everybody kind of understood that. And, I'll be happy to provide this so that we can, attach this presentation to our meeting minutes so that you guys have an opportunity, if you want to review it again, to have the ability to do that.
Yeah, I think it would be best to be shared on the website in advance of minutes. I have a few questions, but I'll do so after Robert.
So kind of going on that last point, our PG&E bill gets cut in half, but we're still paying a significant amount to your companies. And so our net savings is 10%.
That's correct, right.
And do you own the equipment forever?
We own it for 20 years. It's a 20-year agreement.
And then after that, that green portion, that PPA payment is also our savings?
Right. After 20 years, the agreement ends, and then you have essentially 3 options under the agreement. You can tell us to remove the system, and we'll remove it at no cost. That's already included in our rate. Or 2, you can buy the system. And truth be told, you can actually buy the system out any year after year 6, after we've extracted that tax credit value. And then 3, you can say, let's just extend for another, 5 or 10 years.
Okay. And what you were earlier talking about, we're saving more compared to other school districts. Which school district has the largest solar or best solar installation that you know? I mean, does LA Unified have one? It wasn't on your list. I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, no, I think a great comp is Fresno Unified, a school district that we've built solar at all of their high schools and their maintenance yard and their services yard, and they're saving $500,000 a year. Another example would be State Center Community College District, where we built about the same amount of solar, and we promised them that they were going to save about $450,000 in year 1. And when we actually went back and looked at the savings, they were saving about $600,000 or $700,000. Partially as a result of PG&E increasing their rates so fast these days.
Okay, and are their savings different because they're bigger than us and have more solar? Or they have better rates, or?
No, your savings are comparable to them. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Robert. Henry.
Okay. Hi, Brian and Kevin. Thank you so much for the presentation. This is really informative. So thank you. And as a teacher, I mean, we love the fact that there will be a energy curriculum that we can share with our students. Our Irvington High School, our freshmen are working on a change project and looking at climate change and looking at renewable energy. They will love this idea to be able to see what's happening and see their own schools are helping with reducing. Helping climate change, of course. One question I have is I know that the tax credit has dropped down to 22% this year, and then after next year will drop down to 0. We're hoping that the new administrations will continue to tax credit, but does that mean that we have to have this installed and have this something approved by our school board and actually have this installed by the end of next year to take advantage of the tax credit?
Yes, I hear your question about what is going on with the tax credits right now and how does that affect Fremont. So at the end of 2020, the COVID relief package and the associated legislation in Congress pushed through an extension of the federal tax credits, so preventing them from stepping down from 26% to 22%, as you alluded.
Mm-hmm.
They remain at 22% currently, and they're anticipated to stay that way for another 2 years.
Oh, that's good to know. But does that mean that we have our school board will need to like approve this project and actually have this installed, or just get it started before possibly this tax credit getting expired?
Yeah, I think you're on pretty firm footing in regards to the tax credit, that you would want to do that, before 2023. But, kind of that's, if you recall, I had a slide about incentives last time and it mentioned the tax credits, but now, that has been kind of taken off the table and firmed up with the legislation that I just mentioned. Unfortunately, it's sort of out of the frying pan and into the fire. What we are really concerned about right now is the net energy metering framework that I mentioned. And so if you take the tax credits off the table and you understand that, yes, you're going to have this tax credit for the next 2 years before it steps down, the real next hurdle is net energy metering. And what we mean by that is just like if you were to install solar on your home and you're not home during the day and the system's cranking out energy, it's going to be spinning your meter backwards. And so the question is, what is the utility compensating you for that energy that you're generating and then putting back on their grid? And historically, when solar first got started in California, you would get 100% of the retail rate. So you would be selling power back to the utility at the same price that you would have bought it from them. In 2017, we changed regimes from NEM 1.0 or net energy metering 1.0 to 2.0, and now you're getting full retail rate minus about 2 cents, right? And so it got worse. And now the CPUC and the utilities and everyone are negotiating what NEM 3.0 will look like. So given the pressure that PG&E is facing, the real question is, what is that going to look like? Is it going to look like it did previously in California, or is it going to look something more like you would see in Modesto or Turlock or Merced Irrigation District or SMUD, where you get some fraction of that compensation, like it does in Hawaii or Arizona, where you don't get that full retail rate. And so what we think, and Kevin, maybe you can comment on this, is that based on the guidance that we're seeing, is that you need to get an interconnection application submitted this year in order to kind of get your place in line and secure grandfathering. Kevin's nodding, so.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's the industry's best guess that in order to secure that grandfathering on the current net metering program, you would want to submit an interconnection application for your projects, which means, you'd want to have a contract signed for a project as well, because those two things kind of go hand in hand.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Trustee Zhang.
Thank you. My question is, what about if we can get a loan and we would buy those equipment ourselves?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So
yes, please.
What we have looked at is kind of these different scenarios. So if you were to enter into the PPA, you would have $26.1 million in savings, as we mentioned. But if you were to do a bond purchase or get a loan, assuming that you have a modest 3% coupon on that debt, you would be looking at, a savings of about $18 million over the course of the same time frame, and a multi, 15-year payback and about an 8% IRR. And again, the real reason for this is because with the PPA, you're able to take advantage of those federal tax credits, that 26% off that when you purchase these with a bond or a loan, you would leave on the table.
I see. Okay.
But I think the last point here is this PPA buyout in year 6. After we take advantage of these tax credits for 5 years, in year 6, you can purchase the system outright. So say you fall backwards in a lot of bond money, or you want to take out that loan, you have options to change the ownership structure at that point and buy out the system. And you're essentially getting, you know, a operating system that has been well maintained, that's 6 years into its 30-year life for, you know, 30% off.
Yeah, but then I look at your chart, and then if we do that buy in the 6 year, and then our saving is what, 21 million? But that still is not as good as the first option.
Yes, yeah, yes.
But in the end, we own the, you know what? But then after 20 years, we own the system.
You can own the system, yes. You can.
Right.
Right.
I see. So, well, okay, I have to dig into these numbers to truly understand. But, you know, as an individual, you know, I look at it, I think it's better for me to buy than to lend, to borrow from you. Well, maybe the story is different because several years ago, I can also take advantage of the federal tax credit.
Correct.
Yes, but right now I no longer have the option, right?
As a school district, you can't take advantage of the tax credit because you guys, the district is a tax exempt entity. But you as an individual, or me as an individual, or you know, a private company, they can take advantage of the tax credit. So it really kind of changes, it makes the economics better under a PPA for that reason.
I see. Okay, thank you.
And that's why the bulk of school districts and public agencies in California opt for the power purchase agreement. I would say, you know, 8 or 9 out of 10.
All right.
And just to let you guys know that we are doing a presentation to the board on all of the solar options, the first meeting in February. So Trustee Zhang, you'll have an opportunity to actually look at all of the multiple programs that the district is evaluating and provide input and see kind of what our options are laid out on the table for us to take advantage of. This is one of several that we're evaluating as a district to utilize.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So I'd like to, without objection, add 2 minutes. Okay, seeing no objection, I had a few questions that I hope can be answered rather quickly. You notice that there's a buyout option. Do you know if that's at fair market value or $1, or what is the end of lease option for these units?
Yeah, it's at the greater of fair market value and then a predetermined rate in the contract. And that essentially we're required to have it be a fair market value threshold in order for this to be counted as a capital lease on our books and an operating lease on your books, allowing us to take the tax credits on it, allowing it to be on our balance sheet essentially. And then the other portion is essentially a threshold that our investors can invest in confidently, knowing that they'll get a return on their investment.
Does that disappear after year 6? Like at year 20, are we worried about that lower end? Does it fall away?
Yeah, it falls away in year 6. It's just the fair market value. Yeah.
Okay, so after year 6, it's the fair market value buyout option.
After year 20.
After year 20, it's just the fair market value option. Okay, got it. So these units typically have a life of 25 to 30 years. Is that correct?
Correct.
So even if we were to buy it in year 1, we would only, we would pay for the O&M, but we would only benefit from it for its useful life. And so, and then stepping back, if we exercise our option of fair market value in year 20, we would only expect to see 5 to 10 more years of useful life for these projects.
Yes. And then I would add to that, you know, there are multiple components that make up a solar system. And so the panels themselves, the solar modules themselves, have a 25-year guarantee or warranty, and the expected life of them is more like 30 years. The structural steel and the bulk of the infrastructure and the labor to install the thing to provide racking on your parking lots is going to have a much longer life than that. So, you know, if you have this thing installed and you want to essentially remove the modules, put on new modules, put on new, you know, string inverters, you have that option to really kind of extend the life of the system because you have a bulk of the infrastructure already there.
Got it. And then I think that was, oh, when you say this year that we should get our, you know, if we decide to go forward as a district, do you mean the school year or calendar year?
Calendar year.
Great.
I would just add one more comment to that 20-year. The 20-year term is intentional, partly related to that issue of net metering that we talked about earlier. So if you guys are able to move forward with these projects, and if we're able to get interconnection applications submitted and secure the 20 years of grandfathering under the current net metering rules, you have that 20-year runway of knowing that you're getting a good deal and you're saving money based on the PG&E rates. You know, in 20 years from now, we don't know what the net metering program is going to look like. It may not be a good deal for you all anymore at that point. And so that's another reason why the 20-year term is built into the agreement.
And the last question, the increased cost for utilities, that's on both, like with the program and without, right? So when I look at that 3 million versus 1.6, both of them account for the increase, like the escalation costs?
Correct. Yeah, this is increasing over the course of 20 years. And so is your new utility bill with solar. That's going up at the same assumptions that we lay out here.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I think that concludes this segment. Thank you so much for, well, I'll let Kelly close us out on that point.
Well, I just want to say, Kevin and Brian, thank you so much for coming and sharing this information with us. If there's any additional questions that you guys think of post-meeting, please feel free to email myself or Sharon, and we'll forward those questions and get those answers for you. But as I said, we are preparing, my department is preparing a very comprehensive presentation to present to the board on all the various options that we have available to us. And we'll be asking their permission for us to go ahead and start the process to begin to execute and implement some of these things through, you know, the regular process of a construction project. So, so that we can hopefully take advantage of some of these opportunities within this calendar year so that we can realize some savings and kind of get our sustainability mandates implemented on the scale that's been identified in this presentation. So thank you guys so much. And we really appreciate you coming, and I'll be talking to you guys probably early next week or the latter part of this week. So
understood. Thanks everyone. Good night.
Thank you. And I believe that brings us to thoughts on future meeting topics. So for anybody new to the committee, this is generally a standing item at the end where we take proposals for future meeting topics. And then if there's some consensus, so I believe it's historically been like 3 other people, you know, want to also see it so that it's a shared committee interest. Then we add it to a future meeting, either the next one or, you know, if it makes more sense for another one, we do then. We, just to give a quick heads up, timing wise, it didn't work out to have the city of Fremont talk about development projects for January. So that's why we have it scheduled likely for February, pending confirmation. And then we've discussed at prior meetings about the long range facilities master plan process and not doing so until a little bit later in the year. So that's why those are 2 topics. And I'll move to Brian, unless Trustee Zhang had her hand raised for this item. Okay, thank you. Brian?
Yeah, on the long range facilities master plan, I think it would be helpful for this committee to kind of to see the plan for the plan. You know, what the timeline is, or I recognize it could change, but I think it would help us for our planning to know when to schedule a lot of time on our agenda to support the facility plan update. So I think I just, for references, a request I also made it for the CBOC, because it's a hugely important process. We may even want to provide some input as to how the process is going as well. So I would hope that I would hope that that maybe that could happen at our next meeting, I guess, is the request, that, or at least we could get the information and decide how much time we want to spend on it.
Okay, so this would be the plan for the plan, which is what I think we mean by the process. But either way, if you could also, you know, as you've done historically in the past, at other times, send me and Kelly an email of what a potential approach is, that could help build that item, because we already have wide agreement on discussing this item. So this would just help, you know, inform the scope and approach.
Sure, I can follow that. And then on the City of Fremont one, I just wanted to ask that it include any updates on, I think the IBAG housing requirements, that the new housing requirements that may be coming in addition to maybe general development topics. And if that's too big, splitting them into multiple items is fine too. But that was the item I was a bit concerned about when I, based on the thought that there may be significant requirements that the state puts on the city to build, and it'd be good for us to begin to understand that. So I wanted to make sure that was clear.
Just to give you guys an update, I did hear back from the planner from the city today, and they actually just returned this week from their holiday break, so that's why I didn't have any updates for you guys, Antonia, when we spoke last week. But I will be talking to them on Friday, and they are in, you know, they're very happy to accommodate us. So I'm going to go ahead and ask them to come and actually speak to us in February. So I'll have more information for you guys on that. And that's something we can definitely put on our agenda and hopefully get some feedback from them on that. And then the other thing that you guys need to know about is the new demographic study. The report is going to be presented at this next board meeting. So you all, I know, previously asked for that. So there will be active discussion, and it will be presented by the associate superintendent. So I'll have that available to potentially share with you all after the board has an opportunity to review it and provide input and accept it as it's being submitted. So that's another topic you guys can put on your agenda for the future.
And that actually was the third item I was going to mention as well. So I think that would be good to have on our agenda next time.
Henry?
Okay, thank you. I was wondering, it doesn't have to be next meeting since I don't think we'll be opening classes anytime soon yet, but just want to see if there's a way we can, because the teachers are still very concerned about, the teachers themselves or also the students, about the ventilation in classrooms. And we know that, like, for example, we know that in classrooms, a lot of times the air is being circulated to keep the heated air in, and AC cooled air inside, but the thing is it doesn't really bring the cool air in. And also there are all the older classrooms do not have air quality monitors like all the new classrooms do have. Just want to see if this is something that we can talk about, if not a next meeting in the near future, before we even start talking about bringing students back.
I was conflicted out of the beginning part of a meeting that FAC had either 2 to 3 months ago on ventilation. Did we cover that, Henry? So I can't speak as to it, but did we cover that, or would this be supplemental?
It's supplemental, just because that's still a major concern of all the teachers and for the students when we do need to bring them back. especially about the part about circulating air, because I know that even in the new buildings, air is just being circulated inside just to make sure, like, if it's a heater, it will keep the heat, it wouldn't waste energy heating the air, keep bringing fresh, colder air from the outside in. But that's one major concern that our teachers still have before we can even start discussing about bringing students back. So I just want to see if we can like get either an update or Kelly map.
Yeah, and I want to avoid discussion of a potential agenda item, but if it's a quick response, Kelly. Sorry, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
I'm sorry, guys. I just wanted to refer you guys back to the board meetings because the superintendent and the director of M&O actually talk extensively with the board about the items that they're doing to improve the air quality in the schools. And so I know that they did talk about it last board meeting, and I know that it is going to be a topic of discussion this next board meeting. So there's a lot of information that's on the district's website, and there are plans and strategies that have been implemented to address that issue. So I'm not going to get into the details, but one of the things, ordered air filters for all of the classrooms. So areas that are not well ventilated or have, they're old buildings, all the classrooms are going to have those air filters that, kind of circulate and purify the air on a regular basis. So, but once again, that's in that information that's presented to the board. And I believe the superintendent is going to speak to how all of that is going to be implemented at this next board meeting when he reports out on his school reopening plan.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Well, maybe I'll watch the next meeting first, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Henry. And Trustee Jones.
Yeah, I'm also interested in learning more about air quality issues, partly because even when, the COVID situation is much better and, potentially over, we still are going to face probably years and years of wildfires that cause air quality problems. So, we need to think not only about air quality in terms of COVID, but air quality in terms of, wildfires and how our systems are set up to mitigate that, because it's really rough having our kids in classrooms during those bad air quality days, especially at our secondary sites where doors have to open and close multiple times a day because students are moving from one period to the next. It's not like you can just stick a kid in a class and keep the door closed the entire time. That's, not the way it works. So I think the HVAC issue is going to be a much bigger discussion that needs to cover a much wider range of things than just COVID.
Great. And so to the voting members, is this something we would be interested in? February looks somewhat busy with the topics that we've already scheduled. Is this something that we are interested in talking about in March? I see a head nod from one member. I see another head nod. And I see a raised hand. Oh, another nod. So we have more than enough to talk about air quality general. So I think that would probably be with M&O, and Kelly and I will work on the details. But it will be it'll definitely include COVID, but also, as Trustee Jones noted, I think we have to keep in mind wildfire season. All right, so with that said, seeing no one else in queue, we all have our marching orders. So thank you very much and have a good evening, everybody. Bye.